name is Adriana Chavarin Lopez, and I am here from Sabbaticalize. We're going to slow down today, and we're going to do it on purpose because we all work in systems where that is rarely allowed, especially if you work in education and with children. You feel guilty when you are taking time for yourself, right? So for today, for the next 15 minutes, we're going to slow down and we're going to do that on purpose. All right, so take a deep breath with me. Exhale, and let's get ready for the learning. So I believe there is a survey that is going to pop up, and then you are going to check off, is it rushing, reporting, surviving, or reflecting? Most of you are in the reflecting zone, which is great, and then followed very closely by surviving, right? So it's almost like the double-edged sword, right? It's like that dichotomy of surviving and reflecting. And I think most of you are aspiring to be the reflecting, but you're also like working in realistically in the surviving, because there's probably a lot of things that are being called to your attention right now. So reflection. So I'm glad to hear that most of you are trying to get to that reflection zone. Most systems, most of our school systems are actually designed for completion, not reflection, right? So I'm going to read that again. Most of our school systems are designed for completion, not reflection, right? And I'm going to guess that most of us are going to strive for reflecting, but when the going gets tough, when things are due, you're actually going to shift back into completion, right? And why does that matter? Why does it matter that our systems, right, are designed for completion and not reflection? And that is because right now, as all of us have heard, there is a shortage of teachers. There's a shortage of administrators, right? There's a shortage of leaders in general. And so that is indicating to us that there are high levels of burnout. There's a lot of turnover in our school systems. And we all know this, right? And some of us are ringing the bell, right? And we're like, hey, like our systems are on fire right now and we have to change that. But for the most part, there's silence, right? Things start to change, disappear, but we tend to remain very silent. And so all of these pieces, burnout, turnover, silence, that's all data that we have in front of us that are telling us that there is an urgency, there's an emergency going on right now because we have been focused so much on just completion, right? And not really thinking about how do we keep leaders in our systems? How do we keep our teachers in our system? And so that is part of being a reflective culture. And so if we don't reflect, right, then we're not creating the space where we get to slow down, even if it's for 15, 20 minutes, like I said, to really interpret what is our human experience. What has it been like this school year? What are some of the things that we encountered that we learned from? And so if we don't take the time to do that, then we're going to lose critical system insight, right? That is going to allow us to then be the best systems for our students. So here's the interesting part. I know you're probably saying, Adriana, I wish it's aspirational. I don't have the time. But we have all of us, for the most part, are built right on the same type of school system, except maybe some other countries have different endpoints and start points. But for the most part, there is a month. And if I'm talking about the system that I'm usually used to working in, that pause point is June. And it's the end of the year. We all get to do a collective exhale in June. But what do we usually do with June? We rush straight into planning. We rush straight to finish reporting and submit paperwork that, the district office or whoever it is, has been calling for. And now we're working on preparing for next year. And so we haven't even paused to reflect on what this previous year has been. So we skip that pause that is built naturally into the month of June. And again, it does not have to take a whole week. It doesn't even have to take a whole day, right? I'm going to show you some ways in which you can do it probably within like a half hour's worth of time, okay? So think about, when is that pause point that's built in for your system when leaders, so when all of us here in this room, when leaders are reflecting, your systems are learning, and your insights don't just have to be about you personally, right? You can reflect as a whole system, as a whole school, as a whole team, whatever it is that you are going, whatever your working point is. And that is going to give you data. Whatever your answers are, that's going to give you data about how your system is functioning and what are some of the things that might need to be fine-tuned within your system. So I'm going to frame it to you as routine versus ritual. So again, remember, our systems are built in for completion. So therefore, you find a lot of routines in school systems. And so they're very task oriented. They're very compliance oriented, right? There's usually closure at the end of the school year. And one example of that is when we have teachers turn in their keys for the summer. I never understood why I had to turn in my keys, but you did. Maybe you get to let your teachers turn in your keys, but there's some kind of routine that you have to check off and complete. Versus ritual, it's very meaning oriented. There is reflection that is allowed and it's actually planned for. And that reflection is aimed at transforming. So there is some level of transformation that is expected. And what it looks like is that leaders sit with their teams and they reflect on what they've learned for that particular period of time. Right? Now, both routine and ritual matter. You have to have them both. You have to create the system in which both routines and rituals are done. But only one is going to create that transformation. So if you like status quo, if you're like, I'm good, my system's good, I don't need to change or anything, then you are routine heavy. But if you actually are a system that has to transform and has to improve for student outcomes, then you have to have both the routines, right? And the rituals, which are going to keep your culture healthy. I want you to take a moment to think about one end of the year routine, all right? Something that you do every year, which is routine. And I want you to think about how can you take that routine and make it into a ritual that is going to add meaning, that is going to add to your team culture. As you're thinking about rituals usually fall into three categories. There's learning rituals. What did you learn about the students and their experience? That's a learning ritual, right? An identity ritual, for example, how did we grow as leaders? What stretched us this year? And then a renewal ritual is what are we releasing, right, at the end of this year? You don't have to take everything with you. And what are we going to protect moving forward? So the renewal ritual actually reminds me of the protocol start, stop, continue, or stop, continue, start, whichever order you take it in. And usually it's asked, right, as part of a survey or an empathy interview. And so that would be an example of a renewal ritual, right? So three types of rituals that you usually see. One of the principals that I was coaching with really wanted to talk about like how do I design a ritual for my grade level teams, right? Or the teams that I work with. And so I thought about this set of questions that we came up with that principal, and I thought, this is very data-wise, system-wise aligned, right? It's type of inquiry circle. And so the questions that this particular principal came up with was, what actually worked this year? So you would ask your team that. What worked for us this year? What surprised you during this year? What didn't go as expected? Maybe you had planned for, some type of unit or lesson, but like what didn't go as expected from how you started at the beginning of the year to now at the end of the year? And then also in thinking about that particular team, what pattern did they notice in their team? How about patterns in their students, right? And how about patterns within yourself? So this particular principal took it from team to student to like this individual unit as well, right? So this is something that would be very inquiry circle, but they're applying it right to the lived experience of the team, but then also of the leader, right? Because then the leader could ask these same questions as well. And so I am going to lead you now through designing a ritual, right? So we're going to take a few minutes. We're going to design, this one's going to be end of the year ritual. Of course, you can design them for any time of the year, but this is more for end of the year. You're going to think about who has to be involved in this ritual. When is it going to happen? And I'm going to mention this twice, right now and at the end, because if you do not schedule it, it's not going to happen. It has to be in your calendar, in your team's calendar, or else it's something new. It's easy to just get rid of it. Okay. And then what question or questions are going to guide this ritual? Okay. And I'm going to push you to keep it very simple so that it's very doable for you, right? Again, if this is something new for you, or it's something that you're going to be changing, maybe you do a survey or, some type of question, but if you're going to change the structure, make sure that you keep it simple so that it's doable and you schedule. Okay. So the way that I coach my leaders through reflections is with an acronym SAVE. Stop, analyze, vision, experiment, right? Or visualize, you can say that too. And I'm going to lead you through the SAVE reflection. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do the stop. What are you ready to release from this year? All right. So I see that someone wants to release being negative. And so I'm going to push, what does negative mean? Like, what does it look like, sound like? Actually write that down, something that you're going to stop doing. Does negative sound like complaining? Does it sound like, all right, I'm going to stop second guessing myself. Oh, replaying conversations in my head. Yes, that one's always dangerous. All right, let's go to the next one. Analyze. So I want you to think about what actually worked this year and what surprised you. So using data from platforms to guide data dives in smaller settings. Okay, so that actually worked. Visualizing now towards the following year. So what do you want to carry forward? What might have worked this year? Things that might have surprised you that you actually feel that you want to carry forward. So is there something from students, data that they might have given you, right? That are things that you want to make sure you carry forward so that they continue to have a great experience in your school settings or in your system settings. And then parents the same way too. They're your partners in the learning. All right. And then finally, to experiment. So what is one small shift that you want to try for next year? So if you take a look back at your stopping and your analyzing and your vision, what is something that you can do at a small level, right? At a doable level that you want to try for next year? And this one is going to be super important because this is the one that you have to almost put in a very visual place to remind you, right? I'm working towards the shift. I have to experiment. I have to design towards the shift that I want to do for the following year. Because you can write it right now. And again, if you don't build in that pause, it's going to disappear. And then you're going to wonder, what happened? How come I didn't change? How come that little mini transformation didn't occur? So you have to make sure you keep yourself accountable and maybe share it with a colleague. So if you share it with a colleague, if you share it with someone else, and they can help you be that, have that accountability for yourself. So committing to action. I said I would bring this back. When are you going to schedule this team ritual? So now you did it yourself. You now see that it was pretty quick, right, to do. Of course, we could have gone into way more conversation, but it's not going to take you more than half an hour to do this. And whatever it is that you're going to do, right? You're going to chart it, you're going to do it electronically, however you want to capture the thinking. The important thing is that you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to review it so that, and then actually put it out to your team. This is what we came up with, right? Take notes because you want to make sure that you're checking back, right, with each other. Are we doing this? Yes or not? So schedule those meetings, schedule those conversations because if it's not scheduled, it's not going to happen. And then the next thing I'm going to push you to do, not right now, but when we get off the call, is that you can actually write an email to your team to say, I'd like to try something, or I'd like to make a slight tweak to our end of year ritual. And remember, it's important. Okay, so you have the conversation, right? The ritual. But the other piece of it is then reviewing it and planning for the changes that you have there. Make it public to your team, right? Make it so that it's collaborative and it just doesn't fall on you as a leader. Like you have to make sure that you're pushing and encouraging your team, but make sure that that learning is owned by every single individual, but then as a collective by the team. I'm going to close with this reflection. When we think about taking the time to be reflective practitioners, it's not a pause from the work. It actually is the work. And so as you're moving through the end of the year, the question that I want to make sure we shift is not, what did we accomplish this year, right? We always have assemblies and things about like, oh yeah, we accomplished, but actually, what is it that we learned? And how will that shape what we do next? Right? That is the end of the year ritual. that makes you a reflective practitioner, and it leads you then to transform the systems that you are running day to day for your students.